Hello and welcome to today's video. So in this one, I'm going to be showing you how I speed painted up all of these awesome Undead units by Mammoth Factory Games. They are gory, they are over the top horror, and I absolutely love them. So when Mammoth Factory Games announced that they were doing a Undead set for like their D&D 3D printing stuff, I was pretty much over the moon, because if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you know I am a very big fan of Undead and making them gory. And in this video, I'll be doing like my speed painting stuff and just showing you how easy these are to kind of just get printed and get painted up to, in my opinion, a pretty fun and gory standard. So first up, there are quite a lot of models with this set. There's an undead dragon, there's this big village beastie thing. Some of them I haven't painted yet, but for the core ones, they are really, really good fun. I've always struggled to find different zombies. I always go with like Highlands miniatures because they make some fantastic looking zombies. But a lot of the time, they're always either not quite zombie-ish, so they're always like a different take on zombies, or they're like just not great zombies. But these ones are all pretty fantastic. My absolute favorite is this one that looks like he's standing on a Lego, and he doesn't particularly look too happy about that. But let's get on with actually how I did all of these. So first up, obviously printed them all off, got them all cleaned up and off the supports, and then I hit them all just with a black primer. Now in the past, I've always done like a Zenful highlight, but recently I've really enjoyed doing the dry brush of the white on for next. And the reason I've been doing this is because it gives a really stark highlight. So for things like my rat units and all of my Skaven units, and for things like Undead, this works really nicely because there's a lot of shadow on there and you want them to be quite dark, but then also you want some of those colors to pop as well. So after priming them all black, I went back in there and did a dry brush of base Wraithbone, and I just did this all over it. You can go really heavy with this, you can go relatively light with this, depending on your kind of preference for what you want the colors to look like. Obviously, the more coverage you get with the Wraithbone, the more color you're going to get that's coming through on that, and the less that you do, the less color you're going to get, but you'll get, you know, starker highlights and everything. So again, it's down to your preference and your style that you go for. Once I've done that, I picked up the zombies, and the first thing I did is I did like a mix of Crusader skin and Malignant Green. So I went in there, I'd slosh some like Crusader skin on different parts of it, and then I'd also then go back in and I'd mix in some Malignant Green, not putting the colors together on the palette, but on the actual zombie itself. And it gives this horrible, like, rotten look. So then you have this like human fleshy bit that then kind of goes into this like gangrenous green bit. And I really like the way that works. And I've loved using Army Painter speed paints recently to mix them together on the model itself. And don't clean your brush in between kind of using the different colors, and you get some really nice effects. And on these zombies, I think it looks pretty damn good. Once I'd done all the skin on the zombies, I went back in and I just got some different colors as well. I was going to go brown because I normally end up going brown for like villager clothing, but I figured they all needed to stand out just a little bit. So there's some like blues and there's some purples. Again, it's all the Army Painter speed paint stuff. So just grab a few random colors and throw it on there just to get some different effects. So once that was done, I moved across onto my next units. The first one is I went with this like a bone colossus type thing. And this was really easy to pull off. I literally just went in and any of the bones on this unit, I hit with Pallid Bone from Army Painter speed paint. And I left a lot of the dark in there as well. So I wasn't too bothered. I'd done quite a, I guess, a conservative Wraithbone base on this one instead, so that way I didn't pick out too many of the details. For this like kind of big claw thing that he's got, I hit with orc skin. It's an effect I really like, but what you need to do, if you're using the orc skin, if you go in it with like the pure speed paint side of things, it'll be really quite bright and it'll have a decent amount of coverage, but I didn't want that. So hit it with about 2 drops of speed paint medium with 1 drop of orc skin, and you get this really nice kind of washed out green, almost a plasmatic bolt type thing, but a little bit darker. I like the way that turns out. I pretty much do this across all of the units. So once I'd done the orc skin on him, I moved across onto the next set of units, and these guys were actually really easy to paint up as well. So again, I did the same sort of thing as I did with my zombies, but instead of using Malignant Green, I used Crusader skin all over them, so just doused it all over, and then I went back in there with Purple Alchemy. And what I did is, these sort of like, I don't know, these like round bits on them that look like they're kind of bursting and all these sores and everything. I just went back in there with the Purple Alchemy and I just dropped it on top and started to blend it all over. And it makes it look like it's got all this really red sore skin all over it. I then went in and again on all like the claws and like the spines on top and some of his claws on his feet, I used that orc skin mixed with some speed paint medium just to kind of blend it in, and I got some really nice effects from that. And then once that was done, they looked a little bit plain, and in my mind I had something that I really wanted to try out that I'd done on a previous unit quite a while ago, and it made it look like it had this really sore skin. So I grabbed my oil washes. So with this, I used this like a violet oil wash, and I didn't want to thin it down too much because I wanted to retain some of that color and use it to really tint the model. But basically, I got it to a nice consistency and then washed it all over. So the units that I washed it over, obviously these sort of like stabby boys, and also the bone colossus type things as well. Dog creatures got a little bit of it too. And then on the big beastie as well, he's not quite finished yet. But with him, I did pretty much exactly the same as the bone colossus. And the great thing about this oil wash is, if there's anywhere that's too dark or too stained, you can go back in there and wipe it off if you want to. But what it does is it gets in on all like the white areas or the areas you want, and it gives it a nice tint. So like on this guy, the village dude, it's given it this really sore looking violet skin. And on things like the stabby boys and the bone walkers and everything as well, it just discolors it slightly, but like the skin looks really inflamed, and because they're all undead and everything else, and some of the effects I'm going to come on to next, it just adds a really nice base coat. I didn't put it on any of the zombies because I didn't want to discolor them too much. I was already really happy with where they're at. But on things like those, the ones with the big claws and then the bone walkers and everything else, I think it's a really nice effect. And obviously, you could go for whatever effect you want. So you could use whatever oil wash you want to go with. And one of the reasons I went with oil washes is it cost a small fortune on models this size, for example, to slap it on there with traditional washes. So you could mix it up however you like. General rule of thumb when mixing up your oil washes, if you haven't seen my previous videos, literally pop your white spirit in there first and then take as much color as you want and mix it up until it gets to a nice consistency. If you do it the other way around, or at least in my experience, you'll end up putting too much color in there and then having to add loads and loads of white spirit. Also, make sure you're in a ventilated area, otherwise you can get a little bit lightheaded, so safety first. Before I moved on to the next stage, which is the really, really gory stage and a lot of fun, I decided I was going to do the really stupid thing of going back in there and doing their eyes. Now for this, the best way in my experience of doing it without making too much of a mess is get a little bit of pure white paint, get a relatively thin brush and dab it into all of the eyes, or where the eyes should be. Some of these bottles can be quite hard to find because they've got all these like brains and crevices and stuff like that, so you need to decide where all those eyes are going to be, pick out the detail and dot them all with white. And once that paint has dried, go back in there with your color of choice. For me, it was Plasmatic Bolt. I then mixed it, it was like 50-50 mix of this and Speed Paint Medium, pop it onto your brush and then just drop it in where the eyes should be. And the great thing about this is you can't really go too far wrong, even on the zombies that have like a lighter skin. It doesn't stain the surrounding skin, and what it does is it'll pool around sort of like the outside of the eye, and it'll leave that like purer white in the middle. Gives it a really nice like glaze effect, and it's so easy to pull off because it makes them all look like they've got these awesome glowing eyes. It doesn't take much skill apart from that initial dotting of the whites, and it's really, really easy, fast, and an efficient way to do it. So have a play with it. Again, you can use whatever color you want. Just use your Speed Paint Medium to kind of get it down to a nice consistency. Thicken it up if you want to, but it's a really, really easy way to do eyes. Next, once the eyes are done, it's on to the fun bit. And this is where I grabbed obviously my Uhu glue or Yuhu glue. One day I will learn which way it's meant to be pronounced, and threw in some Citadel blood effects as well. Mix this up again to whatever consistency you want, and then just start slapping it all over. For these, it was great fun. Like on this guy here, for example, I'd done it so it looked like he's probably just stabbed someone and ripped him in half. So I did all the gore between it and then dripping off of it. Some of them have like the hands closed, and I figured they were probably like holding somebody's heart and like squeezing it, so it was dripping out. And it's so easy to do. You just scoop it up, pop it where you want it to go from, then drag it down to the base, and it does this really nice stringy effect. It's like eating a really nice cheesy pizza, just if cheesy pizza was made with Yuhu glue and like blood effects. One thing that I've learned from my last video is it can look really, really bright, and the suggestion that I got was to mix it in with some like darker paint as well. So once I'd done all the blood effect over like all the zombies and everything else, I went back in there and I just darkened it up. So I dropped some black paint into my mix, swirled it all around and started slapping that on there as well. And it gives this nice, I guess, a more, I say realistic, this blood doesn't really look realistic, it just looks super gory. But it gives it what, in my opinion, is probably a more realistic effect. You've got some of the darker blood, this may be dried up over time. You've then got all this more like arterial blood, I don't know, the more brighter blood as well. And it just gives it a nice variation of range, so it's a good thing to try out. Again, with this effect, you can use whatever colors you want. So if you want to maybe have some like bright green drool coming out of the mouths, you could do that. You could slap it on the clear as well. So with the Uhu glue, you could just scoop it up and maybe have this clear drool coming out. World is your oyster when it comes to this crazy effect. And once I did that, it was done. I am really happy with this. There's more Undead stuff to go with all my other Undead stuff that I've used in the past. I really like these models. They are, in my opinion, they are almost over-the-top horror. They're meant to be used with like a D&D campaign, but I think they look fantastic. There's so many interesting details there, and it just really was a lot of fun to paint. Very easy to paint, a very fast and effective paint method in my opinion, and then just throwing on those extra things like the glowing eyes, and then all of the blood. Yeah, it's great fun. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Anything that you would change? I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Had a lot of fun doing it. And yeah, you should definitely check them out as well. Also, let me know, have you been experimenting with that Uhu glue method? I know I've done a couple of videos now and a few people have commented how much they like it. So let me know what you've used it for, how you've messed around with it, what sort of effects you've managed to pull off with it. It'd be really interesting to know. In the meantime, hope you've enjoyed that video. If you have, hit the like and subscribe button. Come along for some more content. If you really want to support the channel, head on over to my Patreon page. Just helps me to add extra things into this. And in the meantime, I'll see you soon. Bye.